Hey, good afternoon. It is Anna Kalinsky with the Anna K. Intown real estate team here in the heart of Emmett Park. I have a very special guest today, somebody who's been helping our team through all kinds of transitions and difficult inspections. I've got Russell Bush here from Atlanta Basement Systems. And before you say, well, hold on, that's not a real sexy topic. Who wants to talk about basements? If you own a house or you're thinking about owning a house, understanding basements is very important. So I'd like to welcome you, Russell. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Well, give us a little bit about your background. I understand you also used to sell real estate, so maybe you understand a little bit about being in our shoes and what it's like going under contract with a new buyer who's super excited and then getting a really maybe lackluster report that might indicate there's some trouble in basement land. Walk us through that.
Okay, so quickly, I'm an Atlanta native. I'm 65, so contrary to what a lot of my coworkers think, I didn't go to high school with Moses, but I love real estate. I grew up in an entrepreneur family. The majority of my life, I have worked for myself, including a couple of decades as a realtor. I love real estate up until a point where I wanted to go back into renovating, flipping houses. In 2013, I had the opportunity to come work for a basement systems company here in Atlanta. And I've been doing that ever since. And primarily what I've been doing is building relationships with realtors. Like this is how I met you guys way back. And to just core that fundamental, what can we do to help you kind of attitude.
Listen, relationships are how we've all stayed in business for this long. And so I understand you've been working in crawl space and basements for a little over a decade. Is that about right?
Yes, ma'am, 11 years.
So you've probably seen a lot of really interesting things. If you're a consumer or you're an owner or you're thinking about owning a house and you're listening to this video, what would you think that they might want to know about getting into home ownership when it comes to sort of your jurisdiction? Like, what should they be worried about? Should they be looking for? And what are the types of things that people get hung up on that really just aren't that big of a deal?
So one of the things to be looking for is moisture. We live in the Southeast. We're always fighting moisture, okay? If you build a house and you're underground, subterranean, you have a very good chance of having some kind of a moisture issue, either liquid water or what's always prevalent is humidity coming through or up from underneath a house. There's two energies. There's the excitement energy and there's fear. I'm always about the excitement, about the possibilities. Our little cliche is we can put a person on the moon, we can take our phone and call around the world. There's no problem that's really that big. It just needs to be corrected.
Yeah. Well, and I think that really is just the conversation, right? Like, I think if you're working with a realtor that's been through a number of transactions, right? And I like to use the word transactions because there are people that have been in this business for decades, and maybe they only do a handful of transactions a year, a couple of home sales a year, versus a real estate agent who might take on 40, 50, 60 sales in a year. And so that exposure to the type of hurdles that you might encounter in a transaction are going to be really important in terms of guiding your buyer to the finish line, right? So when somebody like you enters into the picture, you're a partner. You're not there to advocate for me as the realtor. You're there to advocate for the homeowner. And sometimes people take that approach, like you said, very fear-based. The house is going to flood, or there's mold everywhere, or like the crawl space is collapsing. But I feel like every time we've had the opportunity to work with you, you have always been very solution minded, because typically by the time that we engage an inspector and then understand what the inspection says, these homeowners really want to be moving forward to buying that house if it's not a complete disaster. Now, we don't want to just buy something blindly without understanding how much that might cost, right? Or what the repair items might entail. But sometimes our analysis of what's really wrong gets blown out of proportion. And so I've always felt like you come in with a very unbiased approach. You lay out the facts. You tell us what options we have for solutions. And you're not necessarily there to say you should or you shouldn't buy this house, but understanding that every buyer, whether that is an investor who's seen a bunch of renovation tear down projects, to a first-time home buyer who may have less bandwidth for having to take on repairs, right? You just kind of lay it all out there and you make it easy for people to understand their choices. So I want to give you some feedback on that because I think that's one of the reasons that we've had a really great partnership. So you said what other kinds of things do you work on that you typically see buyers kind of get skittish on during the transaction that you could easily find a solution for?
Okay, so most people, they think of basements, they think, or crawl space. The main thing comes in mind is water. Structural issues are huge here. Okay, I can't think of hardly, but just a handful of things that doesn't apply to structural, because if you have water, if you have moisture, you bend wood by wetting it and applying pressure. So that's what happens up underneath a house a lot. A lot of times, Anna, people will get real hung up on the inspection report comes back with 87 items, 46 pages or whatever. Loose handrails, light switch covers, those kind of things are a dime a dozen, but very few things scare people. When you said, well, like, oh, it's not sexy work. No, it's not. But your car, if it's really nice and clean, nice wheels, if it doesn't have an engine, right? But with us, what we try to do is narrow that down. If it's a buyer, seller, or if it's a new agent or experienced agent, and say, what is keeping you from buying the house? Okay?
Isolate the objection. I love
Yeah,
that.
just cut to the chase, get to that, just remove all of the clutter and find out what their concern is. I'm always there to help facilitate the deal, not to get into the way of the deal, because I think too many contractors, from my experience as a realtor, I hated calling contractors I didn't have a relationship with. As a consumer now, I always want that referral based business because now I have an anchor with that particular company. So when we go out, there's only so many things that can be wrong. Once you find out the biggest concern, provide a solution. And guess what? 1 out of 3 houses we go to in our real estate, we call it our rapid real estate team. So we want to get there fast, right?
Yep.
Probably 1 out of 3, they don't need anything. They've been scared.
Well, I mean, I was one of those. You were so kind to just come on out and take a look at something that's was over 100 years old for me. And you said, look, that's going to be there forever. And there's nothing you can do about it. And nothing's wrong with the house.
When you mentioned something about core values, so integrity, doing the right thing, those are easy words to say.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't know you, it would have been really easy to see some cracks in the veneer and say, whoa, this is really serious. And so everything in life is based off, treat people the way you want to be treated. I'm only saying that because I want to make sure it's ingrained in my own thoughts, my own words, because it's going to come out during that conversation. If we're there to help the consumer, the realtor, the homeowner, or somebody selling their house, we have a program called Fix It to List It. And I'm working with one of your agents right now who are trying to get a house ready to be sold. And there's 100,000 things that you could pick on. We just went in there and looked at what would keep this house from selling. And that's what the solution was for.
Yeah. And that's in alignment with when we work with sellers, because again, you said there's 1,000 things you could pick on. You could spend $10,000 to $100,000 or more getting a house ready to list. And there are also preferences. What we do to the house may not be what the buyer would want done to the house. Now, obviously you want to fix any major defects, so we're not creating additional hurdles during the transaction. So I love that mentality. I do want to ask, so let's talk about your solutions. And obviously it depends on what the challenge is, but what sort of solutions do you and your company provide? Right.
Basement waterproofing, crawl space waterproofing, encapsulation. We do dehumidifier work. As far as the structural stuff, we do in crawl spaces or basements, we do support posts with steel I-beams to hold houses up from underneath. We do wall supports. Wall supports are a huge issue in Atlanta because of the amount of moisture on the outside. A wall does 2 things, and it holds back something, it holds up something. So bowing and cracking walls is extremely common. A home is built to fail. That's just the practicality. It's usually a footing, a wall. Those foot break. they'll sink in wet seasons, and during dry seasons, which we have here, the clay soil will actually draw up underneath there and break the footings as well. So the remedy for those is called a helicopier or a
Yep.
pier from the outside or inside.
Do you typically work with an engineer? Do you guys partner with engineering? When some of these bigger issues come up, how does your company get involved?
So what we do is we have a couple of engineers that we will suggest. I have one in particular that I love working with because he has our approach to business, not making a mountain out of a molehill, not wanting to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And he's very practical, local Georgia Tech guy. Worked with a lot of different structural engineers. Structural engineers are point, dry, and to the fact, which is fine, what they're supposed to do. But we can also, anytime that's needed, we have availability to get engineers involved. I would think that probably 9 out of 10 homes that we go to, they're really simple structural issues, but they're not simple if you're the homeowner or buying a home, right? Those are things that can largest investment, all that kind of stuff. Again, using integrity. If we just wanted to sell something, every time we saw a crack, we could probably scare people.
Well, and I want to point this out. A lot of companies, they do the evaluation, like they can inspect the problem, they'll provide a solution, and they have engineers on staff. And that makes me sometimes a little uncomfortable because there is no arm's length, right? Like I know most of these people operate with integrity, but the idea that there's someone who's an engineer who's also recommending the work that needs to be done and actually does the work, I kind of like the separation of church and state. I like to have my inspector, I like to have my contractor, and I like to have the person that certifies the work that is done properly. And those are 3 different entities. I think that creates a really safe transaction for somebody who is trying to move forward with that.
I think that's right. I love the separation of church and state reference. I think that's a very valid one. But again, most homes are not going to require that. It's just not that complicated.
Right.
You'll usually find it if you're the listing agent and somebody gets scared and you've got a newer agent on the other side, they're going to swing for the fences because they don't know.
That's right.
If I'm dealing with technology, sometimes I don't know, and I go all the way to the 10th degree.
Is there any question that I should have asked you that I have not yet that you would like to tell our consumer viewers?
Every time people see, especially cracks in the foundation, their immediate response is, "This is serious." And every crack in stucco, brick, block, brick, whatever, poured foundations, doesn't mean it's a problem. Okay. And that's why you need somebody with integrity, somebody that's not using fear to evaluate that particular crack. Because one of the greatest joys is being able to tell somebody, "Hey, look, it's not a big deal, monitor it." Or having the integrity say, "This is a big deal, it needs to be fixed." And usually the answer is, or the question is, when should I fix it? Well, the best time to plant an oak tree is 40 years ago. The next best today.
All right, let's find out really quickly what's inspiring you right now before we sign off. I want to hear what gets you up in the morning.
I love what I do.
I love that.
I had to.
Are we lucky?
I stand on the shoulders of giants. I grew up in an entrepreneur family, and I just can't tell you how blessed I am to have a love of appreciation. Like, I don't have a mortgage. I could retire. I want nothing to do with it. As long as I'm healthy, I want to be a human being, human doing involved. There's great satisfaction out of being able to help people every day. Whatever, I mean, as corny as can be, it's just the oldest cliche thing. Love what you do, enjoy it every morning. I literally have nights before I'm so excited about the next day, I have problems sleeping.
Can we all wish for that?
Yes.
I love that. What a gift. I love your energy. I love your energy. We all need people like you around, Russell. I really appreciate it.
Well,
Well, thank you for joining us. Obviously, you're a key player in our solutions for all of our clients, and we just really appreciate everything that you do.
It's a blessing. Thank you, Anna.
My pleasure.
Bye.